Yes, one, two, three. Yeah. Good afternoon. I think I'm live. How are you all today, people? For the 12 persons who is sincerely viewing my live stream. How are you all, people? Yes, I think I'm live. I'm just seeing my own face getting delayed for about 20 seconds. Great. So, hello everyone. I'm Sandeep. So, today is our eighth day, and we are going to look about DOM, which is document object model, as you could have seen in the stream's thumbnail itself. So let us all discuss what it is exactly. How can we leverage the power of JavaScript even more when combined with HTML? It's like having a super saiyan mode for JavaScript. Because as of now, we were learning only the syntax of the programming language, which is obviously equal to any other programming language syntax, to be very honest with you. JavaScript didn't really shine till now as a standalone programming language. It only gains its attention whenever it's combined to a client side or a server side. So that is the reason why JavaScript was created even. And I could have told you on the I was saying that on the history of JavaScript lecture, right? So yes, today is all about merging with HTML and learning more about how can we attract the power of JavaScript towards the document itself. Document means the website which we are gonna get, which we are gonna manipulate, right? So let me take this as a chance to visit the live chat and let's start today's lecture. Hey Adrish, hey Avinash, hey Gopal, good afternoon everyone. Cool. So I think that is something I have done previously. Let me also show it today. If any person has come for the first time, let me share my screen. All right. So this is going to be my area where every output will be provided. And this is my JavaScript playground. This is opened with the help of right click and select inspect element. So you'll be getting this. And if you click on console, this is where we will be typing our own JavaScript, right? This is where I draw something or I show something pictorial representative way so that you will understand the concepts even more clearly, right? And this is my code editor, Visual Studio Code. For the past 7 days, I was using the same editor. You can also use the same editor. And if you're wondering what is this theme, if you are installing for the first time, you will not be able to get this theme. Actually, you should go to this fourth icon here. I'm sorry, the fifth icon. What was I even counting? And just type in Cobalt 2, right? If you type that theme, you will get this first result as Cobalt 2. If you download it, you will be able to set this color theme. It's pretty good. In my eyes, it's pretty visible. You can see all the syntax getting highlighted in a pretty neat manner. So that was just a pro tip. Usually, as every other lecture, I built a normal HTML along with the JavaScript as a boilerplate to make sure that everything is working perfectly. Very loaded. We are on day 8, and that is nothing but document object model. All right. Everything is wired perfectly. So let us dive right into our lecture. Before talking about document object model, we need to know what is a document exactly. Right? So as of now, we never touched any elements on HTML other than printing it with the help of document.write, if you could remember. But what exactly is that document keyword? Well, in JavaScript, the implementers of the language have made sure that they also can run as standalone programs, but also they can provide some extra features to HTML document itself, the document file itself. How exactly did they do that? Well, they have a data structure. First of all, what is a data structure? Data structure is something where you can have a collection of data. So our examples of data structure could be arrays. Arrays contain lots of data, right? It contains strings, integers, booleans, undefined anything. Objects are also a kind of a data structure because you have a key value pair, correct? So objects and arrays are an example for data structures. Likewise, there is a data structure in computer science called as binary tree. Let me write it here. Binary tree. I think we would all have seen this binary tree in our lower classes. I don't know whether you have done this or not, but to have a factorization tree, we used to draw like this, if you could remember. Like if we have if the teacher wants us to draw the factor tree means of a number 8, first what we will do, we will just split it into 2 and 4, because that is the way you can split it, right? There is no other way you can split it. And then what would you do? How can we split this number? We can split it into 2 and 1, correct? Because 2 4s are 8 and 2 1s are 2. Likewise, we can split this further as 2 and 2, correct? 2 2s are 4. And further, this can be split into 1 and 2, and this can be split into 1 and 2. I hope everyone would have done this in your childhood. Basically, you need to derive this factor tree until you receive the number 1 for any number. That is the whole, the motivation for driving a factor tree. Likewise, this particular data structure is similar to whatever we are going to learn today, and that is nothing but binary tree. It's like a tree, right? You have a root node. This is called as root, and these are all called as leaves, or other words, you can call it as nodes even. That is also not an issue. Considering that you have learned this in your childhood, that is why I'm drawing this. If you're not familiar, please do let me know in chat, and I'll start from the basics or something. This is already the basics, but I'll still go lower. Just consider this as an inverted tree. Normally, what part of tree will be upwards in the ground portion, the stem area, right? The root will be always beneath the ground. But here, just consider that the root has been inverted and the tree is going below, like this fashion, in this fashion, right? So the root node is where you will be having your HTML element. So let's go back to our code editor, right? So this is where our HTML starts, right? From HTML, we have lots of sibling elements. So for example, we have this sibling element. Sibling is something which is adjacent to that element and not as a nested element, right? For HTML, head element is a child element, but for head element, body is a sibling element because they are adjacent to each other. They are not within each other. So shall we draw a tree for this document? If I zoom out and go somewhere, yeah, if I just draw it, give me 1 second. I'll just have it as a full screen. Oh, it was already in full screen. Great. So let me have this as the tree here of HTML, and it's split into 2 parts right now, correct? One as head and one as body. These 2 elements are called as siblings. And these 2 nodes coming from HTML are called as children because it's obvious, right? HTML is the parent element. It contains the elements head and body. But the relationship between head and body are siblings because they are adjacent to each other. You can go further even because if you see here, we have meta tags here, we have title here. So you can even go further here. So you can draw it as meta and you can have a title here. Could you get my point, what I'm trying to say? HTML is like the starting point of the document and it's going nested and it's being deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. The head tag is containing the meta tag and the meta tag is containing some sort of value, which is nothing but the description. 1 second. Yeah, it contains some characters and anything. So let me just keep it as a value here, right? The title also has some value, something like document. Also, the body tag has some sort of values. We have a H1 and we have a script tag, right? So we have a H1 tag, we have a script tag, and this H1 contains some value. Let me keep it as a value. And this script tag also has a value here. So could you just analyze what we have just did? we have derived a tree starting from the HTML element all the way up to the last element, which is the script tag here. All right. This is exactly called as binary tree. Now, why did I say all these things? Because JavaScript parses the HTML document in this manner. And this particular parsing technique is called as DOM. Document Object Model. You are converting this HTML element into a factor of root and child nodes. You are starting from the HTML element all the way up to the very last element, that is the script tag. That is why I gave you a similar example for factor tree. You will have a number, you will try to split it into their own lower numbers, and you will further split it until you receive or until you hit the number 1. That is exactly what we are doing here as well. We are having a starting element as a HTML element, a bigger element, and we are splitting it into chunks. Firstly, we are having the head element, we are having the body element, and we are further splitting into chunks. The head element is split into meta tag and title tag. The body element is split into h1 tag and script tag. You will have more elements than this, but this is just a demonstration of what we are supposed to think in our mind. JavaScript uses this same technology to map each of the element inside the HTML. And that is exactly why in your elements panel, you could be able to see this particular thing, the HTML document itself. Without the DOM methodology, you will not be able to parse or understand any of the HTML elements. All right. In JavaScript, I'll tell you once again, every HTML element should have a child. Otherwise, it's not at all valid, right? Even if it's just a text, because we have a heading and we used to have some text inside that heading tag, right? Even if it is just plain text, you will have some sort of child value in every element. Any element will not at all be empty. So if we think in that perspective, if any parent element consists of a child element, that child element may also consist of a child element. So you may have a grandchild relationship with any of the elements. That is totally possible. So if you start thinking in that way, you will derive an entire tree like this, starting from the HTML element all the way up to your last element inside your HTML document. And this particular thing is called as DOM, Document Object Model. You are modeling the HTML document in a way that JavaScript understands. That is why it's called as DOM. Got it? If you had any doubts, please do ask me. Right. But instead of script, we use link tag a lot. Link is used for CSS surveys. Script is used for JavaScript. Link tags are for styling. Okay, cool. So let us start learning a bit more about document, right? If you could remember, we were having the method called write. Am I correct? We were having the method called write, and that was attached to the keyword called document. Let us just try to get that value of document, shall we? So let me go to the playground and let me just type the value of document. If I type the word document, you can see a sort of hashed elements of HTML. But whenever I hover on this value, could you see this getting selected, the entire the HTML thing getting selected? If I just hover on it, could you see this? So let me just expand this particular thing, and you could see I am getting the entire HTML element. Now, can you understand why that method was working? Document.write allows you to overwrite anything on your pre-existing HTML file. Document is something which stores that particular binary tree, whichever now I have discussed. This particular binary tree is stored inside this variable. And this gives us a lot of superpowers to manipulate HTML documents. You can start adding elements, you can remove elements, you can edit the element, you can edit the style of an element, The sky is the limit. So let me give you a recap. JavaScript will not be able to understand plain HTML. So the persons who implemented the language have devised a pattern called as document object model. All it does is converts a HTML file into a particular data structure called as binary tree, where HTML stands as the root node and it just spreads along all the way up to the very last element of that HTML. Got it? Any doubts in this, people? I'll just wait for 10 seconds and then I'll move on. Meanwhile, I'll just read the chat. Yeah, I'm just waiting for your doubts. So may I consider it as no doubts? If there is no doubt, please do intimate that as well so that I'll move on with confidence. I myself will appreciate that I have did my job correctly. That is why I'm asking. All right. I think no one is having a doubt, I guess. Let us also have a doubt session on the last 10 minutes. Right. So, one second. Binary tree consists only two nodes, but in body there are multiple tags. Not necessarily. Binary search tree only should have two nodes. Binary tree need not have any constraint as two nodes. Binary tree can have multiple nodes. The reason why it's called as binary tree is that minimum it should have at least two nodes. That is why it's called as binary tree. It's not like you need to have a constraint of two nodes. Binary search tree is somewhere you need to have the constraint of two nodes actually. Yeah, I got that, Gopal. I hope I have solved your doubt. Let's move on to the next topic of selecting elements from HTML. Right? I hope you would have already known HTML and CSS. If not, there are lots of crash courses for that. Since this is JavaScript, I won't be dwelling too much towards HTML and CSS. So if you felt a bit confusing on HTML and CSS classes, IDs, elements, please just go visit some other basics towards those topics and please feel free to reach back to this lecture, right? Fine. So our second topic is how could we select a particular element in JavaScript? As of now, we have built in our document. We have built all the elements. We have designed all the elements with CSS and everything goes good. But how can we link any element to JavaScript? Well, you have the document object. As I just told you, this is super powerful. It allows you to link or add or delete or edit any sorts of elements inside the HTML document. That selection is done in three ways. Either you can select by a tag name, you can select by a class name, or you can select by an ID name. All right. Let us see all these three examples one by one. I'll create a new element called span, which has the class of greeting, right? And it has the value of, I guess, you can say, hello world. Today is a rainy day, right? Since it's raining here, I'm just typing that sentence. Never mind. Let me just drag it above so that you can see it. Good. So we have a span which has the class of greeting and it has the content which is nothing but a small greeting message. Let me also create another element called div, all right, which contains the ID called another greeting. And this is something which has, let us say, just a text message. This is another random greeting message, right? So we have an ID, we have a class, and we have a normal element. So this is enough for me to explain what I'm trying to say. So if I go to app.js, let me just delete this alert message because this was just written to make sure they were connected. That's why. So how can we exactly get an element from HTML? Well, as I just told you, you have three types. One by tag name, another by class name, and another by ID name, right? If you want to get an element by a tag name, all you have to do is just type document. As I just told you during functions lecture, there are either built-in functions or user-defined functions, correct? So this is one of the built-in functions available in JavaScript, and it is attached to the object of document. Document is something which you will be using a lot because document is the place where the HTML binary tree is stored. Always remember that. Whenever you are typing the keyword document, your entire HTML document is stored there because it's stored in a different data structure and it is easy to access it. Got it? So how do we get an element from the document? Well, you can get with the help of get element by tag name. That's it. So this is something you will be using. It's a method. So what should we do if we want to call it? You should wrap it with parentheses. All right. The get elements by tag name accepts a string as a parameter. What is that string? Well, the element itself. You have the element name, right? For H1, you have the element name as H1. For span, you have the element name as span. For division tags, you have the element called divisions. For lists, you have UL, OL. All right. You should use that name as the parameter enclosed within a string. So let's get H1 here. Could you see something weird in this method? We are not getting a single element, but rather we are getting elements from tag because you cannot be sure that there would be only one element on what we are specifying. Because if you are building a larger website, you may contain more than one element of that particular tag. If you want to be more specific, you should go towards the strategy of calling with the help of an ID. Because if you know HTML, you should also know that ID is something which can be only used under one tag for one name. You can have only one ID for one tag. You cannot reuse the tag again and again. But classes and tag names can be reused again and again. That is why the implementers have made sure that you will be getting a group of elements even if there is nothing repetitive. So in our case, there wasn't any duplicated H1 tags. We were only having one H1 tag. But this method returns you a array, sort of an array, but it's not an array. Let me tell you why. So if I store it inside H1 elements as a variable, and if I just print it, let's see what is printing on the console, right? So I'll save it. I will just reload it here. And could you see something weird happening here? It's saying that it's a HTML collection, but it has the length property and also it has the indexing property. So HTML collection is a sort of special array, but you cannot have any methods associated with an array. Let me show you that as an example. Let me create a variable called array here and let it be the values 1, 2, 3, 4. There are lots of methods which is associated, that is built-in methods I'm saying. There are lots of built-in methods associated to an array. So let me just tell you a simple method, which is slicing. Slicing is something which allows you to make chunks of that original array. So all you have to do is call that array variable and you have the slice method. It has two arguments to be placed. One, the starting index, and another one, the ending index, which will not be included. So let's say if you want the mini array out of this array of 1 and 2, only consisting of 1 and 2, you should start with the index of the element where 1 is contained. So what is the position of element 1? 0, correct? So what is the position of number 2? 1. But if you enter the index as 1 here, this will not be included. In other words, the ending index will not be considered as the boundary, but instead it will be considered as the exclusive boundary. So this index will not be calculated and the range will be within 0 only. So you should always remember that whenever you're using slice method, you should always add this index to a 1 so that the index will be not including the ending value. So if you're typing the values 2 here, the mini array will be coming from 0 all the way up to the index 1. It will not include the index 2. All right, that is exactly what I was trying to say. The index which is mentioned here is exclusive. You cannot include it. So if you are always ensuring to include any elements, you should add that index to 1. Then only you'll be able to get it. That was a different topic. Enough of that. What I was trying to say is that your original arrays will have these methods. But if I want to make this as an array, you can have those methods. But let's just say it is an array. Shall we try the same slice method on this particular collection? But before that, let me just store it as a global variable. Now, temp1 is having the value of the HTML collection. So just type temp1 dot slice. I'll just say it as 0 and 2. So press enter. You could see a value error is being shown. Temp1 slice is not a function. It is showing as an array. It shows an index. It also has the length property, but it's a limited array. It's not literally an array. It acts as an array, but it's not an array. Well, you have an easy, solution to come over this. All you have to do is enclose it into a newer square brackets, put 3 dots, and then type the value of temp1. So now if you assign it to the new array value, now you will be allowed to get all the values here. So now you can have your general methods, slice or anything. So this is just like a hack for converting the HTML collection into your original array. Again, I'm saying, if you want to convert it into an array, all you have to do is just enclose it with square braces and put 3 dots before. There is a reason why we are doing this, but this is not the time to explain it. Just for now, remember this. Enclose it with a square brace, put the 3 dots, and then type the value where you have stored the HTML collection, right? So now this acts as an original array. Enough of that. So let us do the same thing here. Instead of creating a new variable, I will directly use the same strategy here. I will directly enclose the entire get elements syntax with the array converting strategy. So now if I console log this, console log h1 elements, and then if I come and reload it, you could see I'm getting the proper array format. All right, enough of that. As I was saying before, elements are something which cannot be controlled to be unique, because that is the way it is. You can have multiple lists, you can have multiple hashtags, you can have multiple divs, you can have multiple spans, and that is the reason why JavaScript is giving you a collection. So let's say we have a lot of span tags, right? Let me have a lot of span tags. Let me just copy paste it. All right, let me just copy paste. Right, let me just save it as well. So we now have lots of span tags. And if I come here and just select the span tag and come and reload here, you could see I'm getting lots of span tags. And also we do have a span which has the class of greeting, because that is the last span which I have used here. Could you see this? I'm having a span tag of class greeting. So it gives me all the span tags along with the class of greeting. So this, my people, is exactly how you would select an element from HTML. You use your document dot object along with getting the elements method. You use get elements by tag name, and then you will get a sort of limited array, which is called as HTML collection. You cannot use that to any of the JavaScript methods. For that, you need to convert it into a JavaScript array. How can we convert it? With the help of three dots and enclosing with square braces. So now you can feel free to convert this into whatever you want. As you could see, whenever I'm hovering it, it says me that the value whichever is stored inside H1 elements is an array of HTML span elements. That is exactly what we have did, right? If you could see here, this is an array of span elements, and that is exactly what Visual Studio is also telling us. This is an array of span elements. All right, let me take this as a chance to visit the lecture. How hash div did automatically convert to font division syntax? Is it only happening in Visual Studio Code? I'm not sure what your question was, Kushal. Could you just tell it again? How hash div automatically did convert into font division? What does font division mean? I'm not sure about that. Is it only happening in Microsoft Visual Studio Code? Not sure what your question was. I'm sorry about that. All right, so this was the first step. The next step is pretty simple. From now on, the methods will be pretty much self-explanatory to you people. But still, for classes and tags, you will be getting an array. But for ID, you will not get an array, but you will get a single element because it's pretty self-explanatory. As per HTML standards, you should never use an ID to another element. One ID is equal to one element. You should never use the same ID to any other element. That is why it's giving you a single element. But whereas in classes and tags, you may have multiple duplications. So there is no restriction towards that. That is the reason why you are having that. All right, so let's have a class name here called greeting. I'm going to get the greeting span tag. All right, it's going to be greeting span element is equal to document dot. Now, instead of get elements by tag name, I'm going to type by get elements by class name. Right, this is going to be get elements by class name, and this is where I'm going to type in the class name of it. I do not want to type the dot symbol. I just want to type the class name itself. What is the name of our class? Greeting. So that is what I'm going to put it here. Right. I just console log the same greeting element, greeting span element. And if I come here and reload it, you could see I'm getting the same HTML collection. But inside I'm getting the array values of span. Since we have only one class, we have only one element. If you want to get the element within that, again, you have to first convert it into array, and then you can use any of your indexing values. As I've just told in array lectures, how should we calculate the position of an element? Firstly, you should calculate the real world counting, should start from 1, go all the way up to your desired element, and then subtract by 1. That would give you the location of that element. So let's say we have 4 elements. If I want to get the third element, I'll count from 1, 1, 2, 3, and I'll subtract 1 here. So index 2 is the position of the third element. So I can just use that indexing strategy as well, right? So now if I want to get the element itself without the array, all I have to use is just use the indexing strategy of 0, because that is the only element I'm having. So I should use the value of 0. If I reload it again, you could see I'm getting the element itself. Before I was enclosed within an array, but now I'm not having that constraint. So this is how you will select an element from class. The third methodology is by selecting by ID name. So let me select this particular div, which has the ID called another greeting. So let me just take it as another div element is equal to document.get. Now, instead of get elements by class name, I'll get element. This is important, people. Get element, because it's a singular. Element is something which allows you to think that IDs can be only having with one other element. You will not have duplications on ID. That is why JavaScript implementers have named it as get element, right? Always remember this. Again, this is also simple. You have to just put in your ID name. And what was our ID name? Another greeting. So let's keep it as another greeting. And if I just console log it, console log the another div element and come here and reload it, you could see I'm getting the div element itself. The Google browser is something which is so helpful to us all because whenever I'm hovering on that particular element, the respective element is being highlighted on the HTML document. So if I just hover here, could you see this? I'm getting it highlighted. The div element is getting highlighted here. So this is something very, very useful to us if you are building a larger application. So that is it for selecting elements. Now let's move on to adding an element. All right. We have to add an element to a document, and we can do that as well. We can add an element. We can, position any element to anywhere. We can remove an element, and we can edit an element. So before that, let me take this as a break to see the live chat. You didn't type the division tag syntax fully, it converted after you typing /div. Oh, you're saying the HTML thing, this one. So do you, are you mentioning this one? Is it like this which you are asking, Kushal? Yeah, this is something called as emmet actually. Emmet is something which allows you to have shortcuts, and if you press enter after that syntax, you will get the full formatted HTML element. And that is something which you do not want to learn now. I was doing it for my own sake. But what we are concentrating is the end product here. Right? So to just improve my typing speed, I'm just using emmet. But you can also do it like this. You can start like this and type ID here and just type whatever ID you want. And then you can type your message here. That doesn't matter. That was just a shortcut given by Visual Studio Code. Div element means div tag, this tag. Again, if you are not familiar with HTML, I am sorry for that. You need to take some crash courses on HTML. Division is something which allows you to group a lot of elements. That's it. Okay, so I think I have cleared your doubt, Kushal. If you weren't understanding it, please do ask me again, and I shall be very happy to help you. Cool. So our next topic is creating elements inside JavaScript itself. So our next topic is creating elements in JavaScript. As of now, we were using HTML to create elements, right? We were typing some elements here and we were pasting those same elements. But in JavaScript, we have something called as create element inside the document object itself that allows you to create your own HTML elements. That is going to be very, very useful if you want to create new elements and inject it into DOM. So let's think of this example. Let's say we go to an e-commerce site, and whenever we are buying a product, before buying, what we would do, we would obviously add something to a cart, right? So what will happen there? If you go and hover on cart, as soon as you are adding new items, those items will be displayed on your cart. How exactly is that happening behind the scenes? With the help of this methodology only. You will be creating new elements, right? You will be using all those elements and then you will inject it inside your JavaScript, in your HTML document. And that is done with the help of document.createElement. So let's try that, all right? So let me just create a new H2 element. It's going to be just H2 element. And as I just said, I'm going to create it with the help of document.createElement. This method is pretty much straightforward. It expects a string of the element which you want to create, the element name which you want to create. So if you want to create an element of H2, all you have to do is just press H2 here. All right, that's it. Now a new H2 element tag will be created. It will not contain any text. It's just like a newborn baby without any functions. So if you just console log the H2 element and come here and reload it, you could see I'm getting a normal H2 tag without any string or text inside it. It's just a blank element without any purpose. Now you can add either HTML or a normal text inside. There are two properties inside the elements. Either you can add a text or you can add HTML. Normally in headings, we will never add HTML because there is no purpose of doing that. Only headings are used to demonstrate the subheading or heading layout. That's it. Otherwise, we never have the opportunity to have nested HTML inside H2. But whereas in divs, spans, ULs, or any other additional HTML elements, we have the purpose of having nested HTML tags. But here we do not have that. So I have two opportunities to teach both your properties as well. So no worries for that. To add a text inside HTML element in JavaScript, I'm saying, not inside HTML document, I'm saying in JavaScript itself, we have the opportunity. And that is done with the help of a property called as inner text. I'll even write it here, inner text. Inner text is something which allows you to write text inside the element. And inner HTML is something which allows you to write HTML inside the element, right? That is the difference between inner text and inner HTML. Cool. So let me just use the inner text property here with the help of the element itself. You need to call the element because this H2 element is the variable which contains the HTML heading element. If you could see on Visual Studio Code, whenever I'm hovering here, this spits out the value. It says the value is containing the type of HTML heading element. All right. So that is pretty much what we want. Let me just hover off H2 element. If I press a dot symbol, you could see I'm having all these properties here. Could you see these? All these tons of properties added to the element itself. Our intention to just add a text inside. So let me just use inner text. Now let me say this heading tag is created from JavaScript, right? Now let me just cut and paste the console log after I add some text, right? I'll just save it by pressing Ctrl S and I'll reload it. Now could you see people? I'm having a proper heading text inside the H2 element. So this, my people, is how you will add your text inside an element. But still, it is present only on the JavaScript side. We did not add this to the HTML document. This you should make sure, because could you see any H2 tags of this message here on the HTML document? I could even prove you that if you go to the body tag, still you did not have the H2 tag here. It is only created on the JavaScript side. It is not being reflected on the HTML document. There are ways to do that, but let me just tell you after I tell you the inner HTML property, right? Because there is a slight difference between both, and they also tell you the difference between them. Got it? So let me take the div element here, because that is something where you will always have nested HTML tags. Again, to jog your memory up, I just remember what that was. This was just a normal HTML text element, and it did not contain any nested elements. So what we will do is we will just have inner HTML as a span tag. Okay. Now what I will do is I will just have the inner text here, and I will copy the comment here so that it will be relevant enough. That is why. All right. So now all I have to do is just select another div element dot inner HTML. So this is where you will be having your HTML. Again, you cannot equalize to any HTML node itself. You should enclose still with strings. As I have done here, I have enclosed the text within a string, right? Same wise, you will be using the HTML factor also in strings. What I'm trying to say is you will enclose it in string, and then you will start your HTML syntax. So let's say I have a span here. and I close the same span tag also. And I'll say this span tag is created inside div element. All right, I'll save it. Let me just include the setting called word wrap inside Visual Studio Code, because since it's overflowing, I do not want that to happen. So let me just switch it on. I think now it will be fine. Yeah, cool. So now you will be just having an idea of where it's sending and everything, because that is somewhat irritating on a visual perspective. That is why. Apologies for that. So now if I reload it here, could you see something happen? This span tag is created inside div element is successfully showing inside the division, because the div element is being selected from HTML document. That is why it was reflecting on the HTML document. But before, I was creating a new element and then I was editing that element. I didn't select something from the HTML document and I didn't edit anything on that element. Was creating a new element and then I was doing all my manipulations. But here I directly manipulated from an element which was presented previously on the HTML document itself. That is why here, if you could select on the elements panel, you could see I'm having a span tag sitting cosily inside the div tag. This, my people, is how you will write your HTML. But one thing you could have noticed is that your previous text has been overwritten by inner HTML, by the new HTML. So this you should always take note of. I'll even write it here. Overwrites existing content. This is always important whenever you're using inner HTML, because it overwrites your existing text content with whatever you're trying to insert. This also applies for inner text as well. Let me prove that to you. I have the H1 elements, right? Since it was an array, let me select by the indexing thing and I'll show it to you. So H1 elements of 0, that would give me the first index position of that array element, which is obviously the first H1 element, because since it was only one, there was only one element inside an array, I was using this pattern. All right, so let me just select the inner text here and let me just write modify the text content. All right, I'll save it. If I reload it, could you see this? I'm having the text called modify text content, but one second. Okay, so this should not be span, this should have been H1. Sorry for that. I will reload it now. And could you see this? I am modifying directly from JavaScript. How cool is that? Now you can use all your techniques and try to manipulate it from JavaScript itself. So this, my people, is how you will be able to edit any text property inside an element. All right. So that is it for editing and creating elements. You create an element with the help of the method create element, and you add a parameter of whatever tag you want to create. For our case, it was H2. That is why I used the H2 as a string in that parameter. After that, this acts as a normal HTML element. You will be doing all the manipulations just like how you selected it lively from HTML. It will resemble the same attribute as a selected HTML element. Got it? So that is it for creating elements. You can have inner text and inner HTML. I told you that before you will have a difference between inner text and inner HTML, correct? In inner text, even if you want to add HTML, because if you forgot it, it will not recognize as valid HTML. I literally prove it to you. I will be enclosing here with a span tag, right? I will close it with span tag. And if I come and reload it, you could see the span tag did not get recognized inside inner text. It considered as just regular strings and it just allowed you to have it as a string. But if I convert it as inner HTML, watch what happens. If I reload it, the span tag has been gone. The string of span has been gone. But if I visit inside H1, it is now having span tag. So this is one big difference between inner text and inner HTML. In inner text, even if you are trying to insert HTML, it will not work and it will consider as just mere characters. But in inner HTML, whatever HTML string you are inputting will be recognized as valid HTMLs and it will convert it to the respective tags. All right, that is the difference between both. Let me just reverse it. All right, cool. So let me take a break and see the live chat now. I thought this was the topic where you guys will have lots of doubts, but it seems that no one is asking a doubt. So I can assume that everyone is understanding this. Because this is something where JavaScript starts to get a meaning. Because JavaScript was created only to serve its purpose towards web. Otherwise, it will not have been survived as a regular programming language like C or C++. That is why this topic is so important. So if you had any doubts, please do say, guys. All right, I think we are running out of time. So let me not waste any of your precious time. And let me go to the next topic, adding the element to HTML, right? Because that is exactly what we are gonna do and we should do as well. We have created this element, but we did not stick it to the HTML document. Now, this is pretty finicky, so listen very carefully. Well, you have lots of ways to add a child inside a document. You have, I'll just draw it and say, otherwise it will not work. Let me just reload it 1 second. All right, cool. Let me have it a full screen. So as I just said, we have different methods of adding a child element into the HTML. One, you can directly select the body with the help of document.body because there is a property called document.body. Because instead of selecting it with the help of document.getElement and then you having the index of 0, you have a straight property inside the document object itself. To avoid all those redundancies, they have made it convenient so that you can straight away select the body tag. I'll show you that in the playground as well. So if you go here and if I clear the console and just select document.body, it will give you the entire body tag itself, which will contain every single element. So that is pretty convenient. Or you can literally go here and select document.getElements by tag name and then select the body tag and then indexing with a 0. This would also give you the same body element. So which one is easy? Should I go to this route or should I go through this route? Obviously this route, right? That is why they have the convenience of accessing the body immediately with the help of document.body. That is it. Nothing more, tougher or not able to understandable thing. It's just a convenient way to access it. That's it. More or less, it's the same. So either you can use document.body to add a child at the end. This is very important, people. To add a child at the end of the body tag or add a child at the beginning of the body tag. All right. For ending, you have a method called append child. All right. For beginning, you have prepend child. All right. This particular method expects a regular HTML element, and that is something which we have created out of document.createElement. Create element will return you a valid HTML element. So let's go back to what we have typed here. Document.createElement gives you a valid HTML heading element. It's a valid element which can be able to inject it directly onto your body. So shall we do that now? So in order to add an element to HTML, This is one of the many methods. Let's just discuss the first method, adding directly to body. All right. This also has two types of ways to add. One, add at the beginning and add at the end. All right. So I will have again as adding at the beginning with the help of prepend child, and then adding at the ending with the help of append child. All right. Let me just scroll it all the way above so that you will be able to see it in a clearer fashion. I'll just have the document or create element over. Cool. So now I'll be using the beginning thing, all right, with the help of prepend child. All I have to do is just select document dot body dot prepend child. Oh, there's no prepend. Let me just see here whether I could use it. If I just select H2 element, I save it, and if I have it like this, super, which saying this heading tag is created from JavaScript. But if I hover here, could you see this, people? So this is not prepend child. Sorry for that. This is just prepend. I'll go here and erase this as well. Actually, there was a method back in the days where I was using JavaScript. I think they have removed it on the newer versions. Cool. Anyways, the method didn't get destroyed. That is what we want. So prepend is something which allows you to add at the very first slot of the body. It's something which is added immediately after the tag opens. So in our case, could you see it? After the tag is opened, immediately this tag is placed. The newly created H2 tag is placed. So that is one idea. The next idea is to have it at the end of the tag. And that is done with the help of document dot body dot append child. And that is done with the help of the H2 element. And if I reload it now, could you see what happened here exactly? This was something weird, right? So let's just go to HTML and see what really happened. What was the last element in the body tag? In other words, which element was before the closing tag of body element? The script tag, correct? So as of now, the last element inside the body tag was the script tag. So whatever element which we are going to inject onto the body, if we are using the append child method, that position will be assigned to whatever element now we are placing. So in our case, H2 is now the last element of the body tag. In other words, it is the element which comes immediately before the closing tag of body. Got it? So this is one way to add elements. But again, you will not have much flexibility, right? You cannot have the flexibility to add. What if you want to add it within the div tag? What if you want to add it within the span tag? That is not possible, right? So that comes as our second option. Instead of document.body, we can use the same strategy here. Using certain elements. So now what we can do is we can use the same strategy as how we have it here, end and beginning, but using the certain elements. Instead of using document.body, we can now use selected certain elements. So what I can do now is I will take the div tag itself. As I told you before, inner HTML will allow you to overwrite the existing content inside it. So in our case, what if we want the text as well as our new element to be injected? There is no other go rather than using appending or prepending. So let us do the same thing here. So the second option is to adding. Why is my N key not working? Sorry for that. Adding elements to specific HTML elements. And again, this is done with the same strategy as how I have discussed before. right? This is adding at the beginning prepend, and let me just select this as the div element, right? I'm getting the div element. Now, let me just comment it because inner HTML allows you to overwrite, and I do not want that to happen. That is why I'm commenting the inner HTML. Now, let me just use another div element and let me allow the text content to be present, also the new element which I want to inject. So let us inject the same H2 element here. Append child, and then I'll press H2 element, right? So that is done with the help of beginning, but this should be here and this should be on the top. But instead of document.body, this should be another div element dot prepend. Right? Let me just comment it and show you one by one so that you can understand. So now come and reload it. Let me go and check inside div tag. As you can see, I have my own text element, which was there previously on my index HTML. We were having that this is another random greeting message. That is present as well. Also, I have my own H2 element. This is exactly what I wanted, correct? Because in inner HTML, you would be overwriting the existing content, but here you are not at all touching the existing content, but you are just adding a new thing onto that element. So the same thing happens inside what happened on body. The div tag, as soon as it opened, the first element is what we were intending to inject. And that is done with the help of prepend method. All right. So now if you want to add it at the last, that is pretty much self-explanatory. And as you guys could have known, it is done with the help of append child. I'll reload it once again. Now, if you could see, it is at the last element. It is shown as the last element. In other words, it is located immediately before the closing tag of the div element. All right. So this is the second option. Third option is to add with the help of positioning. And that is something I have to create with, or I have to show you by having multiple elements. So let me take it as a chance to visit the live chat. I also use this to create some elements inside so that you can understand what I'm trying to say. All right. Why is the response rate so low? Are you guys there even? One second, let me just see here. Again, if you do not have any doubts, please do at least respond, guys. That is the only way you can make this stream lively and interactive. If you're not asking anything, then I do not know whether you are getting my point or not. So please do answer. Please do respond. Response is always appreciable for a content creator. All right, great. Let me just move on with the next strategy. And that is done with the help of the third point. Adding elements with the positioning strategy. Again, this will be seeming confusing, but let me try to explain as much as possible. So meanwhile, I'll create some nested elements to show you what exactly is happening, right? So let us create some newer elements. Let me have a list here, and then this will have some sort of list elements. List item 1, and let me repeat it as 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Sorry, not there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right. So this is going to be our example for my next explanation. As I just told you before, you are either able to add an element at the beginning. I'm sorry, you are able to add an element at the beginning, or you are able to add an element at the end. But what if you want to add an element at the middle? Or what if you want to add an element at the second last position? Or what if you want to add an element at the very last, element after the tag. What I'm trying to say is, what if you want to add an element after the closing tag of UL? Or what if you want to add an element before the opening tag of UL? There is a method which solves this problem exactly. And that is done with the help of insert adjacent element. I write it here. Insert adjacent element. This is pretty finicky to understand, guys, but I'll help you by drawing and then just explaining. All right. Let me scroll it. And let me just zoom it somewhere. First of all, there are 4 positions which you need to understand before going to the code. All right. There are 4 positions available. One is before end. The second one is before begin. The third one is after end. And finally, the fourth one is after begin. Again, it takes some time to get used to, but since I'm coding this for 3 years, this has become second nature to me. Before end is something which you will be injecting right before the closing tag, right? Right before the closing tag of an element. So let's take an example thing. Let us take the same UL tag and let us use the same UL thing. And let's have some 2 LI elements here. List 1 LI, list 2 LI. All right. So this is going to be our example. Before end is something which comes before the ending of the closing tag. So this position, right? This position is called as before end. All right. Before begin is something which comes before the opening tag. This is the position. So this position is called as before begin. All right. After end, you could have already guessed, it is something which comes after the closing tag. So this is called as after end, and after begin is something which comes after the opening tag. So this particular area is called as after begin. All right. I'll give you a recap. You have 4 positions: before end, before begin, after end, after begin. Before end means before the closing tag. After end means after the closing tag. Before begin means before the opening tag. After begin means immediately after opening the tag. So these are the 4 positions you should always take care in your mind. So what if you want to immediately add it inside your second list element? Or what if you want to add an element between your list 1 and list 2 as list 1.5? So there is an opportunity to do that, and that is done with the help of, firstly, you must have it selected, right? You should have it selected as li tag, and then you can use your after end methodology to add a new element. So let us do the same thing now. If you come and reload it, you could see I'm having a list of list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if I hover on the list thing with the help of this arrow, you can hover anywhere here, and that could give you the element itself. So if I hover on this particular li tag, it gives you the li tag which was currently selected. So let me just select the entire UL. Our current goal is to add an element between li3 and li4. So how could we exactly do that? Well, there are 2 strategies where we could follow. One, select the entire UL, and then you could select the list element with the help of elements by tag name. Or you can directly choose elements by tag name and press li, and then go to the second index. Since this is the third element, you should go as 1, 2, 3, subtract it by 1. So you'll get the index as 2. After you get the second element, you can use this insert adjacent element methodology. So shall we do that now? So firstly, I have to select the list elements. So that is done with the help of, I'll use this third thing as adding elements using insert adjacent element. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all the list elements first. So var list elements is equal to document dot get elements by tag name. All right. I will enclose it with parentheses and I'll select all the list elements because that is what we want, right? All the li tags. If you want the li tags within the UL, you can do that as well. That is why I told you before. Because if you are selecting just blatantly li means, it will select all the li tags inside your HTML document itself. And that is something we do not want, right? That is why I told you before itself that firstly you will select the UL tag and then you will select the li tag. To be even more specific, in my case. So that is what I was trying to say you. So for that, what we can do is you'll have a class name here. So let's have a class here as generic list. And let me select the UL first. Let me select the unordered list. And that is done with the help of get elements by class name. And this is going to be what? I forgot the class name immediately. Sorry for that. Generic list. All right. So first step, we have selected the UL itself. Now, if I reload it, you can see I'm having the class name called generic list, and this is what I have selected. Since we have just one class, I'm going to index it with 0 so that I'll be having the what? UL itself. All right. So the next step is to select all the list elements. So now it's pretty much easy because now we are confident that whatever we are going to select is within this particular UL and not in anywhere, not anywhere in the document. Only we are going to select within this particular UL. And that is something which is done now. Instead of document, now you're going to select the unordered list because we are shrinking the scope of searching from the entire HTML document. We have now shrunk to the UL part alone. That is why you are using unordered list. Unordered list dot get elements by tag name. All right. It works exactly the same. Now I have to use the li tag. So if I now console log the list elements, and if I come and reload it, could you see this, guys? I'm getting all the 6 LIs here, but only one disadvantage is I'm still having it as a HTML collection, but that is pretty easy to remove. All I have to do is just create a new array and enclose the HTML collection inside it. So now if I reload it, I'm getting a proper array here. So what is my next strategy? We have covered step 1, we have selected the UL. Step 2, we have covered all the list elements. Step 3 is to attach, or in other words, search for the third element. In array, what index is at the third element? Index number 2. So that is something we need to get it. So let me create a new variable here and call it as third list element is equal to list elements of 2, because that is something which we have to get it, because index is something which needs to be subtracted from the real world counting. So 1, 2, 3, subtract 1, you will get the value as 2. All right. So that we have got the third list element, everything is fine. Now, finally, step number 4, we need to add between list element 3 and 4. So which position you need to use within the 4 options? Obviously, after end is something we need to use, because if you could see here, after end is the place which comes after the closing tag of that element. So since we have selected the list element 3, there is some, in order to inject between 3 and 4, after end is the option to go, right? So now what we have to do is third list element dot insert adjacent element, and it takes 2 parameters. What are all the parameters? I told you that we need to have a position, right? out of the 4 positions, which position did I just say? I told you to have after end. And the second argument is asking for an element. Since we didn't create an element, let's do it now. So let's create a new list element is equal to document dot create element of li. All right, I'm going to create a new element of list item, and then I'm going to have a normal text content inside it. So the normal text content would be new list element dot inner text is equal to list item 3.5. That is just my own humor because we are having it within 3 and 4. I'm just having the value of 3.5. That's it. So we have created a new element. We have added the text called list item 3.5. And finally, we are going to inject the new list element inside here. New list element. All right, everything is done. So now if you come and reload it here, could you see what just happened? We have a new list item getting injected successfully between the third element and the fourth element. And this, my people, is how you will perform the injection. All right. So this was our third step. I think this is everything we need to cover on injecting elements. The last topic for today is to remove an element, and that is pretty much simple. All you have to do is just select an element. Right? Let's say we are selecting the list item 2. How would we exactly do that? Sorry for that. What we will be exactly doing. Let me just use this as an opportunity to just speed things up as we are running out of time. So let me just select it. Let me select this entire array and store it as a global variable. So this temp1 will now have the array here. To have it removed, all I have to do is just select the element first. So let's say I'm going to remove the second element from HTML. What is the position here in this array to access the second element? 1, correct? Because real world counting is 2. If you subtract 1 from it, you will get the index of that particular element. So 1 is the element here. You could see if I'm hovering here, it's getting automatically highlighted on HTML. Could you see this? All right, great. So this is something I need to store it on a variable. So let's say I'm having it as second list element, and let me just store it inside it. Temp, okay, temp is not defined because that is not at all any variable. So now if I select second element, you could see I'm getting the list item 2. Very, very simple. All you have to do is just have the method called remove. That's it. That is about it. So simple, right? If you call the method remove, the element has been removed successfully. So now if I hover it, could you see this, guys? I cannot hover it anymore because that is not present in my HTML at all. I can even prove it to you by going here. Is there any element called list item 2? Not at all, right? So this is exactly how you would remove an element. Yep, that is all about for today's lecture. I know it's pretty heavy to get it all done in one day, but since we are in a rush and we are about to complete all the concepts, I need to wrap it on a faster pace. Apologies for that. Feel free to ask any doubts on chat or yeah, I'll be happy to help you. Okay, so Mrugesh is saying you have to practice to understand. For sure, for sure. Ayan also says it as so. Good. I think we have completed our session. Please do ask me any doubts, guys. I'll be here for some more moments and we shall call it a day. I think this is one of the longest lectures we have ever had, right? 1 hour, 20 minutes, I think. Yeah, now 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Super. Cool. I guess that's an elongated lecture of DOM. This is not the complete lecture of DOM, as you could have already guessed. In our lessons, we take 1 week to teach every single concept in DOM because that is huge. DOM is literally huge. But you are, how could I put it? You are well known with all the concepts which you are about to handle in JavaScript. These are all the absolute fundamentals in Tom. I didn't leave out anything. I didn't leave out any secret ingredient or something. This is essentially all about you want to know in JavaScript. You know how to add an element, you know how to delete an element, you know how to edit an element, you know how to select an element, you know how to inject it to a particular place. This is exactly what you would want in a regular application. Yeah, understanding today's topic was difficult compared to previous classes because this is where you start using your superpowers in JavaScript. And this is something where everyone lacks, to be very honest. In interviews, if they are asking something in perspective of DOM, candidates would be literally like blinking because this is something you need to always understand. Cool. I guess that is it for today. Please do let me know the doubts of anything. I hope I was clear enough. I know this is tough, but there are lots of resources in YouTube as well. You don't have to visit any video at all. You can visit any other's video. Not at all an issue. But yeah, try to cope up with the DOM thing. It's not at all a problem because Friday is not the end of the world. You still have a lot of time. Again, the purpose of this lecture is just to make sure that you are using your time in a good manner and not just wasting it. So you don't have to take it in a negative manner that I'm not understanding anything or such. This is just a way to make yourself useful of this lockdown period. That's it. All right, guys, I think that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to all of the 16 people who have joined today. I feel so thankful that I'm teaching to all of you guys. And let's tune in all tomorrow, right? Same time, same sessions. Tomorrow is going to be about events. Events is something where you can get any data based on users' interactions. So let's say if a user clicks onto something, or if the user types onto something, or if a form is being submitted, what exactly needs to be done can be manipulated with the help of events, right? And that requires a basic understanding called as callbacks, right? Callbacks is something which I didn't teach it yet. Let us have a small session about callbacks and then let us move on towards events tomorrow, all right? Yeah, tomorrow is going to be even more harder lecture, so prepare yourself for that. All right, guys, bye-bye. Have a nice afternoon, have a nice lunch, and let's all tune in tomorrow.